The Solidus VS8100 plugin has been released from Audiority. I've been playing around with this new guitar amp plugin for the past hour, and I like it. Let's get right into the audio samples, and afterwards I'm going to show you how to use the Solidus VS8100, which is an unofficial emulation of a Marshall Valvestate 8100, which was released back in the year 1991 and is considered by some to be Marshall's best guitar amplifier ever. Alright, I know that wasn't an exact match, but it was just to give you an idea of the two. If I would have tweaked the EQs a little bit more, I probably would have came closer. But anyway, let's talk about the interface of the plugin. I'll go back to the big one so you can see it easier, so I don't have to have it zoomed in with the screen capture. And yes, I am demoing it. I did not get a license for this one, so I don't have any bias towards that. Not that I normally would anyway, but I think it's important for you all to know when I do and do not get licenses from companies. At the top is a toolbar. Going left to right, we have the Audiority menu, website link, user manual. They have even more links, which I don't understand why they don't just put that inside of this. Register is to unlock it from demo mode. About shows the version number, which yes, I'm covering version 1.0, so if anything changes, I didn't review it. Settings, we can change where the preset library is, where the license file is, where impulse responses are, and I assume this has to do with the notifications. And then finally, we have the all-important GUI resizing menu. You can have the plugin be very small if you have like a laptop screen. This is what it looks like normally. And for this review, I want it to be the biggest it can be so I don't have to zoom in. To the right, we have the high quality oversampling button. Now they say that it's just oversampling, but I think this setting sounds brighter on many of the different presets. It's definitely not subtle. I recommend keeping it on unless your computer is from like the year 2004 or something like that. Randomizer. This is actually a very cool control, and I'd like to see it on more Guitar Amp Simulator plugins. Basically, you click this, and all these controls change. Let's see that in action. So as you're playing the audio, you just press this button, and if it sounds good, great. Don't click it again. If it doesn't, then obviously just click it again, and maybe it'll sound good on the next try. This button resets everything. I would assume it's to this preset, but I don't really know. Speaking of preset, this is the preset controls. You can either click right on the menu, this comes up, and there's a good amount of presets. I wouldn't say it's an extensive list, but it's enough for this plugin in my opinion. You can also click the left arrow or the right arrow to get to the next preset. As of version 1, the save and remove controls are not working. So I cannot save a preset. At least the notifications works. And yes, you can actually download a freeware amplifier. And then finally, all the way on the upper right corner, you can see that I am not using the full version of this plugin. Let's go to the bottom. Input gain. This is very important, especially if you did not record loud enough or you recorded too loud. You can adjust that here. I think that the different guitar DIs that I recorded sounded pretty good, so I would assume that the sweet spot, as it were, is between -22 decibels and -10 to -6 decibels full scale. To reset it to 0, double click, and it goes all the way up to 24 decibels both ways. To the right of that, we have our noise gate, which I will get to how to use this in a few minutes. Then we have our input effects, which are essentially stomp box pedal effects. We only have 2 of them, an equalizer and a volume boost. To turn it on or off, click right here. Or you can right click the control down here. Our default control screen is the amp, and I will get to the in-depth controls later. Post equalizer, so this is post amplifier but pre-speaker, in case the amp EQ knobs or tone knobs weren't enough. Finally, we have our speaker cabinet impulse response loader. Now the cool thing about Audiority is that they, instead of choosing to reinvent the wheel, they went ahead and got some already great sounding impulse responses. A brief rundown of the controls. You can choose the cabinet resonance frequency, which is on the lower end, and the air frequency. Down below, you can adjust the gain amount for each. The impulse response loader is in the center. You can click it, and then with your up and down arrows on your keyboard, you can choose different ones, or you can just click around. And there's a third way to select a different one, and that is with these 2 arrows down here. Click up and down. And there you have it. The final main control is the output gain. And just like the input gain, it works the same exact way. And it is the final stage in the entire plugin. So whenever you have really high gain guitar amps, if you have even a hint of noise, it's going to be a problem. So noise gates were invented to solve that problem. Without the noise gate, this is what it sounds like. You can actually hear the click track. So obviously I don't want the click track, and I definitely don't want the noise. But in this case, because there is the click track bleeding into the guitar amp, I definitely don't want that. So the way you set this up, first of all, turn it on, and then you have hiss, mid, and full. Now, from my understanding, hiss is for just background noise. Mid is for background noise and distortions. And then full is for more complicated noise. What I would tell you is try it out on the default mid setting to begin with. If that doesn't work for some reason, put it on full. Or if it's too much, then put it on hiss. I just have it on mid. It worked good. And what you do is you find the area where noise is still there, but the sound is past it. So this is kind of like a compressor where you don't want to have it too high. Otherwise, every single thing gets eliminated. Literally, you couldn't hear anything there. And what you do is you just back it down until your notes are coming through, but the noise isn't. And then I can keep lowering it until I start hearing noise and then dial it back up. Remember, this would be in a mix with loud drums and loud bass, so you probably wouldn't hear it cutting off too much like that. So I definitely would recommend, if you can, adjust this while mixing. But yeah, without this, again, it just does not sound very good. Next thing is, again, the equalizer before the amplifier. Important if your guitar really wasn't that great sounding, or maybe you had your tone knobs on the guitar and they weren't that good, or maybe the strings were old. There's so many different things that I would adjust this for. It's not funny. And to the right of that is a volume knob, which by default I would keep it down, because your gain knobs in the actual amp should be enough. But if they're not, you come back and adjust the boost. Speaking of amp, from left to right, we have the normal channel, which is for our cleans and our crunches, and you can adjust that by pressing this button right here. And what that does is it adds another input gain, so it makes it louder essentially, if the gain knob alone wasn't good enough. Make sure your channel right here is selected and the light is on the left like it is now if you're going to use the normal channel. To the right of that are our tone knobs, also known as equalizers. They can help your tone a little bit more if the EQ pedal didn't make it sound good enough. Be careful about boosting too much though, especially the treble knob. If the gain on the normal channel was not enough, and again, gain is the most important control when it comes to getting the guitar sound that you want. And if anybody disagrees with me, go to a heavy metal band and put it on the normal channel on clean. Yeah. But anyway, if you want higher gain, you go to the boost channel and you put that sucker on OD2, Overdrive 2. OD2 is the highest gain setting, and you usually would want to start off with the gain all the way counterclockwise and then adjust it to taste. And again, once you have that set, your tone knobs are right here. You have to remember the tone knobs over on the normal channel have no effect when you're in boost channel mode and vice versa. And the other cool thing about boost channel mode is it has contour, which from my research is called the young guy, old guy control, because it does a scooped equalizer sound or it rolls off the high end, depending on what you're going for. To the right of that is a volume knob, And to the right of those controls are the reverb, which I don't think this is amp reverb. This sounds more to me like an impulse response in an actual room. The user manual doesn't really tell you what this is. It just says reverb knob. And then finally we had the master volume knob, which is important for setting it before the post EQ, which is next in line. But that's not our last control. That's just the last knob. Our last two controls allow us to bypass the built-in impulse response cabinet, and we can also disable the amp itself, which is kind of interesting because that allows you, I think, to have equalizers still going, to have the noise gate still going, but also the reverb. So I'm going to test it out on my voice right now and see what it sounds like with the cabinet and the amp off, but the reverb still on. Speaking of which, output EQ, this is, again, important to let you know, this is before the speaker cabinet, so this is the last bit of let's get the sound right before it hits the speaker cabinet, and you just adjust these sliders. They have the input level and output level reversed. I'm not really sure why, but I don't know. Again, to enable this or bypass it, you press right on where you would stop it with your foot if this were a real pedal, or just right click it down here. You can also right click it too, it looks like. Final, I already talked about this, so I don't have to really talk about it too much other than to say these are very nice sounding impulse responses. And the idea is that you're loading different speaker types with different microphone types. And basically, to me, this is the first line of equalization after the input EQ. When you're going to set up your tone, this is very important to choose the right one. And by right one, I mean something that fits the song, fits the guitar player. If you are the guitar player, you would know what taste you like. And if you're not the guitar player, then I would highly suggest that you either sit down with that person or you somehow send them different presets or something, because guitar tone is very personal and very specific to each song and each song's part, because that's one of the other keys to good songwriting and good guitar playing is to have different tones throughout the song so that it keeps the listener's interest. All right, so here's the review part of the video. I do not like that most of the amp GUI was wasted on gray and black space. I know that the developer was going for a realistic amplifier look, but plugin space is so tight that it just doesn't make any sense to cram all the knobs the way that they did. So points off for that, because even on the largest setting, a few of the controls are still too small. I did like that the developer deferred to already good speaker cabinet impulse response makers. You know, at this point, they've already been made, and trying to reinvent the wheel when already good quality stuff is out there just doesn't make any sense. In a future release, I would like to see tooltips on at least some of the controls so that I didn't have to refer to the user manual too much. If you right click on certain parameters, it will actually say lock, but there is no locking, and locking was not mentioned in the user manual, so maybe that's something that's going to come out in an update. I won't take points off for that. But I will say, in a future update, I would like to see the ability to lock the output level and also lock the input level so that as you're flipping through the different presets, those don't change on you. By default, the output level is just too high. It clips the tracks, and I recorded at a reasonable level. So, a half point off for that. But the most important thing by far, as we all know, is sound quality. That matters the most. And in that case, the VS8100 shines. It is right up there in quality with the best guitar amp modelers out there. The noise gate was easy to use, and overall, this is a very versatile guitar plugin, in my opinion. If you don't already have a lot of guitar amp plugins, or if you don't like the ones that you already have, you would be foolish to not snatch this one up because it covers 3 major basses, cleans, crunches, and high gain. And it does so in a very high quality manner. It's basically like getting 3 guitar amps in one. And the best thing I can say about it is, in my opinion, it does not sound like a plugin, particularly the high gain settings, which are, in my opinion, not very easy to model. It's one of my biggest critiques with guitar amp modeling plugins. And this one, to me, sounds as good as the greatest competition. One thought that came to mind when I was messing around with the plugin earlier was, I can hear the speaker cabinet cloth. And by saying that, I mean Audiority nailed the subtleties which not all plugins can do. It sounds nearly as good as DB Quadro Virgo on cleans, and if you saw that review, you know how much I like that plugin. In addition, it also does high gain and crunches, and you get all this at a very good price, especially during the intro sale. So, check it out for yourself. The demo basically silences the audio for about 3 seconds once per minute. So that's not too bad. You can really get a sense of how good this plugin is or isn't on your own material. But it's just another great option that we now have in the year 2020 for in-the-box guitar amp simulator plugins. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Adam for RealHomeRecording.com.